Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor videos. I want to explain a little more of who Alan Watts was. He was a pop culture, counterculture type philosopher from his big heyday was in the 1960s and 1970s. And he dabbled in all kinds of philosophical speculations. He was an Anglican minister for a while, and then he gave up the ministry. It was too, what would you say, Christianity just wasn't his cup of tea, so to speak. He would rather, he ended up studying the Eastern religions, traveled in the Far East and studied Buddhism, Shintoism, the Eastern Oriental religions, and found those to be much more compatible with the worldview that he was comfortable with. And so he gave up his priesthood in the Christian faith and ended up more or less being kind of an iconographic scholar who was not locked down into any kind of a system that all philosophers had to be in order to be in the groove, so to speak. Been described as one of the great unrutted philosophers. And he basically opened up the world to the connection between science and religion. He wanted to, it appears to me from what I've read of him, he wrote like 35, 40 books. I've got about a dozen of them. But he wanted to unify the religions, and he saw the divisiveness of Christianity, and that did not suit him well at all. He was not happy with that. So he was more or less into Buddhism mostly, and his Vedanta principle is probably the most profound part of his philosophy that I personally have found very, very unique and very interesting. So Alan Watts, his main heyday was the 1960s when I was just a child, a very small child too. But I want to share a little bit more of the philosophy of Watts and show you why I think Alan Watts remains viable today. His kids are doing enormously excellent work collecting his various lectures that he gave for years and years and years. And they are collecting it in book form, in new book collections, which is very helpful. And I'm going to use one of those. I'm down here on the Snake River. I'm going to walk over here by the river and show you this beautiful river. I'm in the river bottoms right now by a railroad track, an old railroad bridge. I don't even think it's used anymore, but I'm on the flood part of the river, but I'll go down over here and I'll give you some more philosophy of Alan Watts. Everything is ebb and flow and vibration. Look how the water has chiseled all of this lava rock. I'm in the river bottom right now. River's on the low side, it's right over there. But the way the flowing water carves the rock is sensationally interesting. It shows you the force of flowing water. Let me walk over this rock here. Look at how the river has channeled this rock. Isn't that fascinating? You can see it's just cut deep grooves into this lava rock. Through the centuries, it has really done a heck of a job on this rock. This is the old trestle railroad crossing the Snake River, and out behind me is the Snake River flowing through at lots of water per minute, gallons per minute I should say. Watts, his children have gathered a lot of his philosophy videos and his various lectures that were tape recorded and thought lost. Lots of people have sent them in to be put together in book form. One of my favorite books of all time of Alan Watts is Out of Your Mind. And the idea is you do want to go out of your mind, because if you don't, then you're out of your mind not to go out of your mind. The metaphor is a good one, because the idea is we don't want to stay rather than get. We're already there, but we don't want to stay stuck in the rut of the way we've been thinking as a species, or even as individuals or groups of people, with the theme that we are separate, that the world is out there and we are in here, and that we don't properly belong to this world. And so because, as evolution has shown, even though Tennyson was mildly correct when he said nature red in tooth and claw, yes, I mean it is. Life feeds on life, which is one of the truly great paradoxes. But evolution has occurred because more of a cooperative manner, not only within species, but between species. And the more we see, science breaks down the whole into its individual parts. That's reductionism, to try to understand. And so what we did is we would study bird species and sea turtle species and the pandas and all manners of different kinds of life, bumblebees, etc., separate away from all of the other species and their interactions. And we know now that the mountain squirrels are absolutely responsible for planting those huge groves of pine trees up there in the alpine regions in the high mountains, because they take the nuts and store them and bury them and forget where they are and all that. But so does wildfire. There are some species of trees that can never regenerate without a fire to crack open those nuts, and then the new generation comes out. So we've learned through time, lots of trial and error, that the interrelatedness of species is the most critical thing we have been overlooking. The biodiversity is so immense on our planet. Hundreds of thousands of different species just of insects. And yet it's all interrelated and they all work together. We humans seem to be the ones that are disrupting everything and causing so many problems. But we humans can also, because of the magnificent evolution of our astonishing brain, we can work toward solving those problems. We do not have to be victim. We can be the doer. We can build tools. We have an opposable thumb. Very important evolutionary development. So, I mean, there's an interplay. There is a continual restructuring. There is a continual fight over life, fight for life, fight between species. And yet, that chaos, that tension on one level can bring perfect peace and harmony on another. You know, we have tension. We have a war going on right now in our bodies, in our gut biome, between various microorganisms, and they are constantly at war with each other. If they weren't, we could not live harmonious as an individual person. And so vice versa. We, as a group, as a humanity, bring a higher level of harmony, of order to the cosmos. When the space telescope looks out there in space, it sees entire galaxies clashing, destroying each other, whirling through each other, millions of planets slamming into each other and shattering each other and blowing up, and the gravitational pulls make them swirl in spectacular, magnificent spirals light years long. And yet overall, there is an incredible harmony, even among the disharmony. It's like that river out there. Oh, I gotta stand up, my leg's hurting. It's like that river out there. There are rapids, and there are parts of that river that are really, really rough, and yet that produces, you can see that, rapids, and yet calm. And they all go together. There's chaos, and yet order amidst the chaos. One part is not more important than the other. It is all one harmonious whole, an entire entity. That's how we have to start looking at ourselves and our relationship with the world if we are to survive as a species. Look at this part of this little sandbar that I'm on right now, where the water waves overlap back and forth, pure chaos, disorder, contention. And yet just a few feet out underneath those waves, you can see beautiful symmetrical pattern. While it's breaking down the rock, it's building up the patterns. Chaos and creation go together. That's how it is. The shadow is part of the light. Harmony is part of the disharmony. There can be no other way. The flow of the river is a good metaphor for the flow of time. It causes chaos, and yet it builds creation. It carves away the rock, carrying sand elsewhere, and yet elsewhere it takes the nutrients to fields, which become crops, which become our food, which builds more organized life. It's fascinating how it's all interrelated, without question. I am going to take a minute. And put my feet in this nice cool water. Feel the sand between my toes on the riverbank. Oh yeah, that feels good. Having the experience from my hike, my feet are really hot. But that's not chaos. Because I had the hot, now I get the cool, and it feels so good. Oh yeah, that's nice. The coincidentia Oppositorum, the coincidence of opposites. Thus the essence of reality in time. So I get to stand on this lovely little cool sandbar, cooling off my feet from my long hike. Really enjoying myself today out on the river. Hope that wind's not too bad, but the idea I want to share with you from Alan Watts out of his book, Out of Your Mind, is that if you think that you are something that exists inside your own skin, then you will define yourself as a complicated little curlicue on the edge of space somewhere out here in this universe, right? Is that the valid way to look at yourself, though? It all depends on how you define yourself, doesn't it? For instance, he says, if there was a Big Bang at the beginning of time, you are not something that is the result of that Big Bang. You are the process of that explosion at the Big Bang. All that process is the same thing going on right now, and we are one of the little organized parts of that process. You are the Big Bang. You are the original force of the universe manifesting as whoever you are at this moment. Now that's quite a shift of perspective, isn't it? You're actually the primordial energy of the universe, still in process. At this point, we're organized as us, humans, but we're the same energy as out there 1,000,000 light years away with atoms in the universe. We're that same energy, we're that same movement, we're that same vibration and process, which is an astounding way to look at that. It's just that we've learned to define ourselves as something separate. But the water here, the sand between my toes, and oh man, that feels so good. Oh yeah, that's glorious. That process of feeling heat and cold is because of my nerves. Yeah? But my nerves are a vibration. My nerves are a process of stimulation within my organization of my body at this time. But this process of atoms joining with atoms, of vibrating together, creating chemical processes in our gut, in our brain, in our eyes, in our skin, the chemical changes that my body takes the sun through once it gets onto my skin, the melatonin in me, all of that, this chemical soup of change taking chaos from one part of the universe and creating order in another, and so on and so forth. That's us. We are the entire process of the Big Bang into the universe as it is right now. That's the cosmic vision of Alan Watts. And that makes it pretty darn exciting. It's a lot of fun to read his materials. I want to give a shout out to his kids for gathering so much of his lectures. There's a boatload of him on YouTube. Lots of great lectures of Alan Watts on YouTube. Start watching those. They're fantastic. Hundreds of hours of them. So anyway, that's another one of my backyard professor philosophy videos. I'm afraid this wind is going to make this impossible. I'm sorry. I had to yell like crazy to overcome this wind noise. So, I will be back with some more chess and some more philosophy and some more cooking videos. I might do a cooking video tomorrow, so on Labor Day. This is the day before Labor Day, and I'm just out enjoying Mother Nature because I am Mother Nature, and I'm enjoying it. You do the same. I'll catch up with you later. Be good, do well, have fun! And I'll catch you in the next Backyard Professor, either philosophy, cooking, or chess videos.